Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We're back again with our new series, What is DevRel and what DevRel means to the DevRels. Because a lot of people still have doubts about it, what this role means. Some people think that it's a new role, some people think it's an old role they have been doing for a while. So I thought of inviting the person whom I know as a DevRel since I've started going to OWASP conferences, and the first DevRel I know. That's Liran. Thank you so much, Liran, for joining me here.
Hey, Vanda, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. And I remember that there was conference in Tel Aviv. That was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for the audience,
Yeah.
whatever I say, it's going to be less. So, can you please share something about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Just like a background introduction.
Yeah,
Yeah, no
that's right.
worries. Cool. I'm a developer advocate at Sneak. I basically lead the developer advocacy team here. Um, Doing the best I can to get the internet a bit more secure place for everyone, I guess. I'm based in Tel Aviv. I do a lot of like writing and communities and open source. I love, just sharing information, whether that's like through open source code work or just like writing guides or best practices, or just talking to developers, hearing a lot about, pain points and stuff like that. What can we actually or should be kind of like focusing on in terms of solving problems. That's about me, I guess, in short.
Thank you so much. And let me tell you that he has multiple hats. His GitHub star, you can see the sticker out there, has been contributing to many repos, and he's one of the key people in the developer role where uh, the new directions are going, how exactly things are changing. So I'm really glad to know him and being glad to work with him. Uh, Now, this
My
one
pleasure.
question. Thank you. There's one thing that is the question for everyone. What is DevRel for people? How exactly you should start your career in DevRel? Or if you are experienced, how can you pivot your career to this role?
Sure. So I think to begin with, and probably people will describe their role in different ways. It really depends, kind of like how you approach it, or the key activities of what it is. But I think fundamentally, it is about getting those meaningful interactions with developers, right? So if you're, DevRel being developer relations, if you're working for like a dev tooling company in one way or the other, essentially your audience are developers, and you really want to be able to get them to be successful. So I think someone said this in the past. I think Jennifer Reagans had said that the role of the developer advocate is basically to get other developers excited about building on top of the product, which really, that's kind of like where it is, right? It's like, what are the barriers of using the product, of getting up to date with it, of onboarding it, everything about this that they should be able to know and get started smoothly, and essentially remove any friction that exists, and that can be in many ways. So I mean, that is the way that I see their role and the activities around it, kind of like forming around removing that kind of friction of using developer oriented products.
Yeah, very well said that you need to learn the product and help out the organization with understanding the challenges of the product. Do you see any challenges with this role where people think it's a very fancy role, but do you think that there are challenges associated with this role?
Yeah, definitely a lot of challenges. Um, this role does not lack challenges. I think it depends where you're coming from. As a manager, so before joining Sneak and being a developer advocate here, I was managing engineering teams, and I think that helped me in the sense of using. Usually, as managers, you have a large context switch. Going through the team, the different items, different persons, different agendas. Juggling a lot of balls together, and so I think that is helpful because going into DevRel, you're going to have a lot of context switches. Like one day, you'll be doing blog posts, and the other day you'll be doing social, and the next day you'll be doing, brainstorming or activities or communities, and, answering, going into Discord or Slack or Twitter or social or something else. There's like just a bunch of stuff always happening. And it's less of like deep focused work where developers, can, take the blanket on, put it on, go disappear for like 9 hours, like just do coding and whatever, and then come back. And it's very much not like that with this role, which is, I think part of, the things that are hard about it. So kind of like reconciling your focus and attention span is very important. Another, I don't know, have you been feeling that, Vandana? You've been doing dev advocacy for a while too, or security
Ah,
advocacy, if I'd be accurate.
I've been doing it for 2 years, and as you said, that it's different for different people, and the experience is different, and there are challenges which different people face.
Yeah,
But there's one thing I've learned, that you need to learn to adapt. Change is the
yeah,
only thing that's constant in this role.
yeah. That's never been true. That's true. I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you worked as an engineering team lead and or head of engineering or manager, and now you have pivoted your career to DevRel. How easy was that shift, or how difficult was that shift for you?
It's a good question. I think it depends on what we kind of like measure it, or like in what way do we want to look at things. So from moving from the role change itself, I kind of knew where I was going to, or like I was kind of like set up for it as well, because by the time I was looking into the role of DevRel at Sneak, I was already like part of like the Node Foundation, or back then or now the OpenJS Foundation. I was doing a lot of like involvement with OWASP, with communities. I've had decades of experience with like working in open source and communities. I was speaking at conferences, both internationally as well as meetups. So I was kind of like living the role in a sense, right? And then doing those activities, but just like as a hobby, as something that I really enjoyed and was like something that I really was passionate about. So I was kind of like set up to like going into DevRel. I was like, okay, yeah, I could probably do this full time, and I knew where I was going to. Whereas I think if I weren't doing any of those kind of things, I weren't writing blogs, I didn't code open source, maybe a lot of those things would be new to me, and I would have a lot of like a really big learning curve in adaptation of like all of those things. The other aspect of it is the day-to-day activities, and I think that is a significant change, which also surprised me as well, because from I think most of the engineering roles, there's a lot of collaboration and stuff like that, but you always kind of like the roots of that is always kind of like doing code. You're spending time on the IDE, you're thinking a lot, there's like a lot of brainstorming, designs and stuff like that. And doing that change from very focused on code and core engineering issues, or product engineering issues, into kind of like community and solving friction and uplifting others and enabling others and documentation and all of those kind of things are a different set of problems. And so the day-to-day activities has significantly changed for me. And I think that was the one that kind of like caught me in surprise. Not too much, but to the extent where I felt the change. Like I felt I was like, hey, where's my code? Where's the idea? I haven't opened that for like the last week or 2 weeks or, a month. And it's like, where did that go to? And so I think from having a set of like aligned expectations when you move into this role, so like what to expect to, that's a very important aspect. And it's kind of like when you move from an IC to a manager, where you're not doing the actual work all the time, but rather you're in meetings, you enable others, you remove frictions. So I think you kind of need to be in that mindset of the day-to-day activities overall.
Superb. I think the things that you feel that are done outside, like the conferences and everything, but now you have to do it as part of it. Now, there was a topic which was discussed in the past few years a lot, burnout. Do you see that this role also has that?
Yeah, for sure. It's easy to get burned out too, especially because the context switch and a lot of the activities are, you're sort of stuck in this loop sometimes of like pleasing others in a sense, where it's like, hey, can we do a talk about this? Can you go to that conference? Let's write a blog about this and that. So it's really easy to get into a point where you're just doing a lot to enable really others and unblock them, and just like, run things forward. And I think maybe like the most hidden piece of that is probably the travel, right? The conference speaking. So you go from conference to conference. Sometimes, travel is like, 3 conferences, back to back, which is out of, travel time in the air or commute or whatever, which is also like, it's not just mentally hard, it's like physically hard as well. Like, you're losing time, you're losing sleep, all of those kind of things. So I think if you get into a point where you might be on autopilot of like doing those things, at one point you'll realize you might be going into like a burnout stage where it's like just too much, and you have to be conscious to those things in advance, so to prepare you to like not go into a burnout stage.
Yeah, thank you so much. Actually, this is something which I think everyone goes through, especially DevRels, because there's too much of travel, there's too much of conferences and then blogs, and it's like a full of different aspects. And then
Yeah,
the way you said context switching, that happens very, very frequently. So
yeah.
goal changes very frequently, and then you keep feeling that, are you doing enough of things?
It's also the time zone, right? Like that also
Yeah.
something that is very tricky, because usually like when you work at like dev teams, right? Like let's compare DevRel to like dev development. So when you work at dev teams, you have like the co-location of things. So yeah, there are like international teams, whatever, but mostly, you work in a specific time zone and you co-locate with like, EMEA or Americas or whatever. But with DevRel, genuinely, you can work from anywhere, which is one thing. But the other thing is, because you have like all of those like cross-cutting concerns, like in dev, have like these cross functions of like, marketing and product and engineering and this other the partners and whatever, like all of those kind of like functional organizations within an organization. They are also like spread out, so you kind of like have to work across all of those things. And the time zone gets blurry, and like if you do a CFPs and people get back to you and like you reach out to people on DMs and then they tweet you back at like 10 p.m. or something, and then you continue the conversation, so everything kind of becomes a bit blurry. And it's I know for me it's like it's hard to kind of like put a range of like, hey, I work from like this hour to that hour, and like if they DM me or email or something, or Slack or Discord or whatever at like 8 p.m. or whatever, it's family time, it's something else. So I know for me it's a bit hard, and it does get blurry, and I'm okay with this. But I think mostly this is something that people have to know, like how to juggle. Do they have like flexible working hours where they can split, the day around this? Or do they need to like actually block it in specific ways? And I think that's more of a personal way of like the way that you like working. But it's one of those challenges around how to like not go into burnout, how to specifically stay focused, and all of those kind of things.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Liran, for sharing the wonderful insights. I'm sure everyone would get benefited out of it. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. So for everyone who's listening, I'll be sharing Liran's details in the comment section so that you can get to him if you have any questions about this role. Thank you. Have a good day.